Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You give us the sources, we pull out the insights. Today, we're getting into something that, well, everyone seems to have an opinion on. Age-disparate relationships. ADRs, for short.
Yeah, the classic May December romance, though that term itself feels a bit dated now, maybe.
Yeah.
But based on the research we looked at, we're generally talking about a significant gap, usually defined as, 10 years or more?
10 years seems to be the common marker, yeah. Though, as the sources point out, what feels significant can really change depending on the culture you're in.
Absolutely.
And our goal today is really to, get past the simple stereotypes. We want to understand the real mechanics, why these relationships actually form, how they work day to day, and the genuine challenges they might face.
Right. So we've synthesized material from evolutionary psychology, quite a bit from sociology and relationship studies too, trying to weave together the biology, the social context, and the individual psychology.
And one thing that jumped out immediately from the sources, sort of challenging maybe the simple biological view, is where these ADRs are actually most common.
Exactly. Statistically, they're notably more prevalent among gay and bisexual men compared to heterosexual couples.
Which straight away tells you,
Yeah.
well, it tells you that culture, community norms, maybe even just social opportunity seem to be really powerful drivers, perhaps even stronger than basic reproductive urges in shaping who partners with whom age-wise.
It definitely complicates the picture right from the start.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start maybe at the deepest level, the evolutionary psychology angle. Before modern society, before all that, what does Darwin's perspective suggest about age preferences? It comes down to parental investment theory, right?
Yeah.
Different strategies for men and women historically.
That's the foundational theory, yeah. It's all about differential parental investment. Historically, females invested, significantly more biological resources in pregnancy, childbirth, lactation. So their mating strategy, evolutionarily speaking, would likely focus on securing resources and stability for offspring survival.
Yeah.
Whereas males, with a lower minimum biological investment per offspring, their strategy might lean more towards maximizing reproductive opportunities, focusing on cues related to fertility.
Which leads to these two sort of core evolutionary preferences regarding age.
Yeah.
Things that studies have apparently found pretty consistently across many different cultures.
That's right. Nugget one, you could say, is the male preference. Consistently, males tend to prefer younger female partners, and interestingly, this preference seems to actually get stronger as the man himself gets older.
And the underlying driver there is presumed to be youth and physical attractiveness cues, which are linked, ancestrally at least, to peak fertility and reproductive capacity. Like peak fertility being biologically around the mid-20s.
Exactly. That's the ultimate evolutionary explanation. And then you have the counterpoint. The female preference. Across those same cross-cultural studies, women tend to prefer partners who are the same age or often significantly older.
And there the driver is thought to be traits associated with older partners. Things like status, maybe accumulated resources, stability, experience. Basically, factors that would have increased the chances of offspring surviving in, tougher ancestral environments.
Precisely. It's about securing investment for the long haul.
But here's where, like you said, it gets complicated.
Right.
We really need to be careful not to just say, it's all biology, because these are broad, ancient patterns.
Right.
And if we're seeing these age gaps working, and even being more common in contexts where reproduction isn't the goal, like the gay couples mentioned earlier, then biology clearly isn't the whole explanation. So how does the societal layer fit in?
Well, that's where sociology really comes in, and often it seems to outweigh the biology. There was this one analysis, I think, from Brown University that was pretty striking. It suggested that the actual social structure of a society is a stronger predictor of spousal age gaps than basically any other single factor.
Wow, okay, more than biology.
Yeah.
And you see echoes of that in the demographic data, right? The sources mention, for instance, that some of the largest average age gaps are found in parts of Africa.
Yes, and there was also a correlation noted. Societies that place a higher cultural value on having children tend to show larger age gaps. It kind of hints at maybe an older pattern where the age gap might be linked to traditional gender roles or even economic aspects tied to family building.
But then, and this is where it gets really messy and modern, there's this fascinating contradiction.
Right. The Canadian research, it found that currently couples in age-disparate relationships are actually less likely to have children than couples who are closer in age.
So even if the societal structure or tradition might favor a gap for, say, reproductive reasons, the reality of these relationships today often doesn't align with that at all. It points towards other motivations.
Exactly. Motivation's beyond just having kids. And economics plays a role too, but it's shifting. The sources talk about the rational choice model.
Which is basically just people partner up based on a sort of cost-benefit analysis. What do I gain from this partnership?
Yeah, essentially. And traditionally, that model might explain why younger individuals, perhaps with fewer resources, might partner with older individuals who have more established wealth or status.
But that's changing too, isn't it? Especially for women in many Western societies.
Yeah.
As women gain more financial independence, more career stability.
The purely practical economic need that might have historically pushed them towards an older, perhaps wealthier partner for security, that need diminishes. It doesn't disappear entirely, of course, but it lessens the incentive, maybe allowing emotional connection to become more central.
And at the same time, social acceptance is all over the place. You know, the older, many younger woman dynamic, historically maybe the most common and accepted form.
Is now facing a lot more scrutiny, isn't it? Questions about power imbalances, financial dependency are much more prominent in the conversation now.
Definitely. But then you flip it, and the older woman, younger man relationship, which used to be heavily stigmatized, you know, the whole cougar label.
Still faces stigma, for sure.
Still does, yeah, but it seems to have gained a degree of normalization. Maybe partly because of celebrity examples like Priyanka Chopra and Nick Jonas get mentioned, or Macron and his wife. People are just seeing it more.
Yeah, the visibility helps slowly shift perceptions, perhaps making it easier to see women as the potentially higher status, more established partner in the relationship.
And there's a generational thing too, right? Younger generations often talk about prioritizing different things in relationships: mental health, personal growth, genuine connection.
Right. And sometimes they might find that an older partner, someone who's maybe done more work on themselves or has a different perspective, aligns better with those specific values than someone their own age. It creates connection despite the years between them.
It's good to keep perspective with the numbers, though. While these relationships get a lot of attention, they're still not the norm, especially in heterosexual marriage.
No, definitely not. The data showed, about 33.9% of married couples are within just 2 years of each other in age. Very close.
And the really big gaps are quite rare. Only about 1% of marriages involve a husband who's 20 or more years older.
And even rarer for the wife to be 20 plus years older. That was less than 0.5%, 0.4%. So fascinating dynamics, but statistically uncommon overall.
Okay, so let's shift gears again. If biology provides a sort of baseline, and society is constantly changing the rules and acceptance levels, what's happening on the inside? What are the psychological drivers that bring two specific people together across that age gap? Seems like it often comes down to fulfilling complementary needs.
I think that's a really good way to put it. The psychological exchange is fascinating. It's often less about the age itself and more about what each person provides for the others, maybe developmental stage or emotional needs.
So for the younger partner, what are they typically seeking, according to the research?
Often things like emotional stability, maybe more developed communication skills, wisdom gained from experience. They might be attracted to the older partner's established sense of self, looking for direction, security, maybe even mentorship.
Okay. And what about the older partner? What's the draw for them psychologically?
Well, they often report feeling genuinely valued for their life experience, their accomplishments, which can be really validating. They might seek, renewed energy, fresh perspectives, a feeling of vitality. Sometimes they report feeling more engaged with life through their younger partner's sort of social world or enthusiasm.
It also makes me think about that idea of personal growth timelines that came up in the sources. People mature at such different rates, don't they?
Absolutely. Chronological age can be a really poor indicator of someone's emotional maturity or developmental stage. Life experiences can accelerate maturity, meaning someone might feel much more aligned emotionally or intellectually with something significantly older than their chronological peers.
So the core psychological point seems to be that successful connection isn't about matching birth years.
Not at all.
It's about finding that alignment in values, in core interests, in where you both want to go in life. Age becomes secondary if that deeper compatibility is there.
Precisely. But having said that, we absolutely cannot ignore the complexities, especially around power dynamics. That's a huge theme in the research.
Yeah, it seems almost unavoidable, right? By definition, the older partner usually has more runs on the board, more life experience, probably a more established career or financial situation, maybe a wider social network. That creates an inherent imbalance.
It does create an inherent potential for imbalance, and the sources are clear about how that can become problematic if it's not handled well.
What are some of those red flags?
Things like One partner consistently making all the major decisions. Financial dependence becoming so extreme, it acts as a barrier, preventing the younger partner from leaving if they wanted to. The older partner using their maturity or experience to justify controlling behavior, emotional manipulation.
And in the most concerning cases, the potential for grooming behaviors has to be acknowledged, especially when the age gap is very large and starts when one partner is particularly young.
Yes, that's the most serious end of the spectrum. But it's crucial to add nuance here. Power imbalances exist in literally all relationships to some degree. Between roommates, co-workers, even partners who are the exact same age, one might earn more or be more assertive or have different social connections.
Sure.
The age gap just makes certain balances, like financial or experiential ones, perhaps more visible or more pronounced from the outside. The real question for the health of the relationship isn't whether there's an imbalance, but whether both partners still feel fundamentally respected, heard, and able to maintain their own autonomy.
That makes sense. It's about how the power is used or not used. Beyond those internal dynamics, though, these couples face huge external hurdles. The level of stigma reported was actually shocking.
It really was. Some of the research indicated that age gap couples report feeling highly marginalized. One study even found they sometimes felt less accepted by their own friends and family than interracial couples or gay couples.
That's profound. It shows just how deeply ingrained societal judgment about age pairing still is.
Yeah, the world is definitely still watching and judging. And internally, beyond power, they face other inherent challenges too, right? Different life priorities are a big one. Maybe one partner is thinking about retirement just as the other is hitting their career stride.
Or health concerns the reality of aging and potential future caregiving needs. Difficulty merging social circles that might be decades apart.
Even potential differences in sexual energy or compatibility related to different life stages. These are all real things they have to navigate.
So, given all that, what makes these relationships work when they do? What are the success factors?
Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, the things that make ADRs successful and satisfying long-term are pretty much the exact same things that make any relationship work, regardless of age.
Like what?
Open, honest communication is paramount. Fierce mutual respect, really seeing and valuing the other person as an equal partner, not as a project or a status symbol or someone to fix.
Right. Maintaining independence seems key too, both partners having their own friends, interests, maybe financial security where possible.
Exactly. And building the relationship on that foundation of genuinely shared values and life goals, rather than just, say, convenience or meeting a temporary need.
Okay, let's also make sure we touch on those groups where age gaps are actually more common, or at least more normalized. We mentioned gay and bisexual men earlier.
Right. The research suggests that within parts of the gay community, cross-generational connections are often viewed quite differently, perhaps seen as a more natural part of the community structure.
And the whole daddy dynamic that's sometimes talked about. The sources suggest it's often less about a purely financial transaction and more about mentorship, guidance, emotional support.
Yes, providing experience and stability, perhaps filling a gap left by a lack of traditional family support or older role models for some younger gay men. And importantly, the research we looked at found relatively little evidence suggesting these dynamics lead to widespread, harmful power exploitation in a pathological way.
Interesting. So there might be an element of responsibility felt by the older partner.
Exactly. Often an active effort or sense of responsibility among older men in these pairings to ensure they don't disadvantage their younger partners financially or emotionally.
Okay. And the other group, older women with younger men, still facing that cougar stigma, as we said.
Definitely still fighting that uphill battle against social judgment.
But what's really surprising there, despite the stigma, is the reported satisfaction level for the women in those relationships.
It is quite striking. Multiple studies indicated that women partnered with younger men often report being significantly more content, more satisfied than women who are in relationships with men their own age or older.
Why would that be?
Well, one leading theory is that this dynamic inherently flips traditional gendered power scripts. When the woman is the older, often more established partner in terms of career or resources, it can naturally create a more level playing field, promoting greater equity within the relationship compared to traditional dynamics.
More equitable, more satisfying.
Yeah.
Yet they still face intense judgment.
So intense that, according to the sources, many of these couples actually keep their relationship secret, sometimes for years, just to avoid the negativity and marginalization from friends, family, or society at large.
Wow. Okay, so wrapping this all up for you, our listener, trying to get a clear picture. What's the bottom line from all these different angles? Evolution, sociology, psychology.
I think the fundamental conclusion across the board is that the age difference itself is really just one single dimension of a relationship's diversity. It's not the determining factor of success or failure.
Right. The success of an ADR seems to hinge entirely on the very same pillars that support any healthy, functioning relationship. Things like
Deep mutual respect, consistent open communication, having genuinely shared core values and life goals, and negotiating clear, appropriate boundaries around things like finances, decision-making, and autonomy.
it really underscores that the quality, the satisfaction, the longevity of a relationship,
Yeah.
it doesn't come from matching numbers on a calendar.
Not at all. It emerges from the unique connection and interaction between two individuals, however old they happen to be.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. We've seen that cultural acceptance is shifting, albeit slowly, but also that these couples still face significant marginalization, sometimes, shockingly, more than other groups who've historically faced prejudice. Given that, and thinking about how much our world is changing, the rise of remote work, connecting people across geographical and maybe age boundaries, globalized digital communities forming outside traditional local norms, how might these trends impact societal views on age-disparate relationships in, say, the next 10 years?
That's a great question. Could more virtual connection actually reduce the stigma by making age less immediately visible or relevant, or could it just shift the judgment online, maybe even amplify it in some ways?
What could actually be done, systemically or culturally, to lessen that feeling of marginalization these couples clearly still experience? Something to think about. We'll leave it there for this deep dive.